Thanks very much. Friends, peaceful protest has shaped the course of history, yet today it's being treated like a crime. Our fellow campaigners are being put in prison and threatened with deportation for doing no more than peacefully exercising their human rights. The right to protest is how ordinary people make their views known between elections in our democracy. It's a vital part of how we campaign for the things that matter most to us and the world, including peace and climate justice. It's especially important for people whose voices wouldn't otherwise be heard, including those from racial and religious minorities. Restrictions on protest have a disproportionate negative impact on those groups. As you said, I'm here today on behalf of Quakers in Britain, which is a faith group grounded in the values of peace, equality, truth and sustainability. And these values lead us to work for democracy and human rights. The right to protest matters to Quakers because we're called to listen for the will of God and follow it with our words and actions. Many Quakers take part in non-violent protests and host non-violent protest groups in their meeting houses. As you said, in March of this year, Metropolitan Police raided Westminster Quaker Meeting House and arrested 6 young people who were planning a non-violent protest. And dozens of Quakers have been arrested this year for non-violent protests on climate justice and Palestine. Politicians talk about keeping the public safe from protesters. But on the flip side, it doesn't feel very safe to be a member of the public taking part in a protest right now. And I've no doubt some of you here feel this more acutely than I do. It's not so much an erosion of our human rights, more of a landslide. The recent changes started with the Police Crime Sentencing and Courts Act 2022, which broadened the scenarios where police can put restrictions on protest and raise the penalties for some offences. I was on the steering group of the Police Bill Alliance, which campaigned against these sections of the Act. We were so happy that we convinced the House of Lords to throw out some of the most terrible parts of that bill, but then of course the government brought them back in the Public Order Act 2023. This Act brought in a load of new criminal offences, including locking on and being equipped to lock on, which meant you now have the ridiculous situation of people being arrested for standing near a protest with a bike lock in their bag. Both of these acts expanded the definition of serious disruption to make it easier for police to claim it's going to happen, and broaden police powers to preempt disruption rather than proving it actually happened. And as if all of that under a Conservative government wasn't enough, we now have a Labour government trying to bring in more restrictions on protest in the Crime and Policing Bill. This bill would let police restrict protests that might go near places of worship, would stop people covering their faces at protests, and would take into account the cumulative impact of a protest when restricting it. And I don't need to tell you that cumulative impact is quite a big part of successful protest. So we all need to campaign against this bill as it goes through the House of Lords now and back to the Commons in the new year. Campaigning against these laws is especially important in the context of who our next government might be and what they could do with these powers in their hands. And these new restrictions on protests are happening against a broader backdrop of politicians speaking and acting in a way that undermines our human rights. Members of our government are deliberately conflating violent attacks on places of worship with peaceful protests. Now clearly these attacks are abhorrent, and we understand that many people from religious communities are scared and are demanding action to protect their people and their places of worship. But these attacks were not carried out by peaceful protesters, and restrictions on protests are not the answer to racial and religious hatred and violence. In fact, politicians are only sowing further division by claiming that they are. So what can we do about all of this? Firstly, I think it's important we get our messaging right. We need to talk about the importance of non-violent protest and encourage others to speak out in the ways that they still can. Keep your messaging positive and remind politicians and your fellow citizens of 3 important things. Firstly, that protest is a human right and a vital part of our democracy. It's protected by Articles 10 and 11 of the European Convention on Human Rights. Our freedom of expression, assembly and association can only be restricted if it's proportionate to do so to protect other rights. Secondly, protesters aren't some kind of subspecies of person. Any member of the public might want to protest at any point in their life. Protesters range from fracking nanas to taxi drivers, from Jews against genocide to Joanna Lumley. Human rights are needed for everyone. Thirdly, protest has led to so many positive changes in the history of our nation, and it's needed now more than ever. People who care about the future of our planet should be allowed to disrupt everyday life non-violently to drive change. In terms of actions, I think it's important we work together to campaign against the new measures in the Crime and Policing Bill, and this might involve writing to your MP, signing petitions, sharing social media posts, writing to your local paper, and taking part in protests. Because protest restrictions have a disproportionate negative effect on minorities, it's important for those of us with privilege to reach out to these groups and their representative bodies to ask how we can support them locally and nationally. For example, Black Lives Matter and Migrants Organise. We need to carry on protesting and reminding people that it's legal to protest, but also be mindful that protesting and risking arrest might not be as safe for some people as it is for others. For example, depending on whether you're a British citizen or not. But my key takeaway from today, this amazing conference, has been that the movements for peace and climate justice and racial justice and workers' rights are coming together now more than ever, and together we are so strong. So to wrap up, protest is neither a privilege nor a nuisance. It's a cornerstone of our democracy and something we do have to campaign to protect. It's vital for all the issues we care about, and it affects every one of us. And I'll leave you with a sentence from the Quaker text, Advices and Queries, which I hope will inspire you. Take heed, dear friends, to the promptings of love and truth in your hearts. Thank you.